Good day, children. So today we move on to the next lesson from Unit 2, which is a poem. The poem is titled A Tiger in the Zoo by Leslie Norris. Leslie Norris was a famous Welsh poet and short story writer. He was born in 1921 in Wales and he passed away in 2006. Now, at a very early age, he knew that he would become a poet, and because he was very much interested in poems of people, famous poets like Dylan Thomas and Vernon Watkins, and so he published his first work, which gained him fame, was Finding Gold, and he has won many prizes, including the Sholomondley Poetry Prize and the Catherine Mansfield Memorial Award. And he was a teacher by profession. So let's move on to our poem now. This poem, before we move into a detailed analysis of the poem, let me give you a short introduction about what this poem is about. This poem is basically about a tiger. Now, as you read the title of the poem, you notice that it is about a tiger in the zoo. Now, just like the title suggests, this poem is about a tiger in the zoo in comparison to a tiger in its natural habitat, which is the jungle. So, this poem kind of moves forth and back, moving from the zoo to the jungle and back to the zoo. So, how the tiger is when it is in its natural habitat, which is a jungle, and when it is in the confinement or bars of cage in the zoo. This poem is trying to show you the very importance of freedom. All right, now let's move on to the poem. I'll read the poem now. We'll go stanza by stanza. He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. Now, here, if you notice, the tiger is referred to as he. So, here the poet has personified the tiger as giving the tiger a human quality. That is why instead of addressing it as an it, the tiger is addressed as a he. Okay, so he stalks in his vivid stripes. He stalks, he walks in an angry or a proud manner in his vivid stripes, that is his very bright stripes. So, what is that good image that comes into your mind when you read the words vivid stripes? Is that those dark stripes of the body of the tiger, isn't it? Now, the few steps of his cage, so he is walking up and down in that beauty of his color, the stripes on his body. He's taking the few steps of his cage because he's confined or put inside a cage, due to which he can only take very few steps within the boundaries of the cage. On pads of velvet quiet, on pads basically here it refers to the cushion type. On pads of velvet refers to the paws of the animal. So, it is referring to the tiger's paws, which the poet has compared to as pads of velvet. So, it is almost like a velvet. You know what velvet is, isn't it? It is a soft silk cloth. So, almost like the paws of the tiger is like a velvet pad. Okay. In his quiet rage. Quiet rage. What do you mean by rage? Rage is extreme anger or aggressive anger. So, the tiger is walking within the boundaries of the cage. He's taking those few steps. He's moving up and down on his soft paws in quiet rage, which means in very silent rage or anger. Okay, he should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the water hole where plump deer pass. Now, if you notice in this stanza, the setting of the poem has changed compared to the previous stanza. In the previous stanza, you saw that the tiger is confined, which shows that the tiger is in a cage and it's in a zoo. Now, the setting has totally changed. the tiger is in its natural habitat, which is the jungle. So what is the tiger doing there, or what should the tiger be doing in its natural habitat? Okay, let's see. The poet says that the tiger should be lurking in shadow, lurking, wait secretly. So the tiger should be waiting secretly in shadow, here in darkness of probably some tall grass or a long grass that is there. Okay, sliding through long grass. So as I said, moving very smoothly and silently through the long grass which is hiding him near the water hole. Now what is a water hole? A water hole is a small pool of water where the animals go to drink. So near the water hole you can see that there was a plump deer which is ready to pass. Therefore, the tiger is waiting to attack its prey. It is waiting for a plump deer to come near the water hole. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. So here again the tiger is in its natural habitat, and what is the poet suggesting the tiger should be doing? The tiger should be snarling. What do you mean by snarling? Snarling, growling sound. It's a growling sound made by the tiger. So the tiger should actually be snarling around houses or making growling sound near the houses at the jungle's edge. Jungle's edge is the outer area of the jungle. So there are villages which are settled quite close to the border of the jungle. So here the poet is saying that the tiger should be, instead of being in a cage, the tiger should now be snarling around those houses which are near the jungle's edge. And what should he be doing? He should be baring his white fangs, baring which is open or not covered with. He should be opening his white fangs. White fangs is that long white teeth of the tiger. He should be showing his white fangs, his claws. What are his claws? His nails, the nails on the tiger. He should be showing his white fangs and claws, and he should be terrorizing the village. Terrorizing is creating a fear in the village. It is not that the tiger is going to attack here. Here it is not the attacking part of the tiger which is being said by the poet, but he is talking about how the tiger terrorizes or creates a certain fear among the people who has settled down near the edge of the jungle. But he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. Now in this stanza, like the previous two stanzas, we saw that the setting was totally different. It was in the natural habitat of the tiger, which is a jungle. Now we are back to the setting of the first stanza, which is the zoo. Now what has happened to this tiger who was free in his natural habitat, who could go and lurk in the shadow of long grass, and who was snarling around the edge of the jungle, terrorizing people? What has happened to that tiger? That tiger is now locked in a concrete cell. I hope you know what concrete is. Concrete is basically a structure made with sand, cement, and stone. So it's a strong structure. So it is locked in a concrete cell, and his strength behind bars. So the a very powerful animal like the tiger is now behind the bars of a concrete cell, and his strength is confined, or it is tied down by the bars of that concrete cell. Stalking the length of his cage, he is walking up and down the cage. Okay, he is stalking the length of the cage. What is the length? How long can the cage be? Whatever is the length of the cage, within that four walls of the cage, the tiger is walking up and down with the limited space it has got, ignoring visitors. So he does not pay any attention to the visitors in the zoo who has come to watch him. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So what does the tiger do now? Now it is in the zoo. Again the setting is in the zoo, and he hears the last voice at night, probably the last person to leave the zoo, that last voice of the night before retiring. And the patrolling cars. Patrolling cars are cars which keep a watch on all the animals, probably in the zoo. I think the poet must be referring to the cars which go on patrolling or keeping a watch over all the animals. And stares with his brilliant eyes. So he looks for a long time, stares looking for a long time with his brilliant eyes, with his bright eyes at the brilliant stars or the bright stars. So the animal is looking at the stars with a longing in his eyes, probably thinking about its freedom and the life it had when it was in its natural habitat, and it is staring at the stars with his bright eyes, which is twinkling just like the bright stars. Alright, so that's the poem for you. Now let's move on to the poetic devices used in the poem. Now, as we began the poem, I had told you how the tiger is personified here. So the first poetic device used in the poem is personification. Personification is where you give a human quality to things. It can be an animal, it can be birds, okay, it can be an inanimate object, but when you personify is when you give human like qualities to something. So here the tiger is addressed as he by the poet. So personification is the first poetic device. Then comes metaphor. Metaphor here is pads of velvet. Pads of velvet refers to the paws of the tiger. So the tiger paws is compared, the paw of the tiger is compared to pads of velvet. So that is a metaphor in the first stanza. Okay, then coming to the second stanza, if you notice the second line in the second stanza, sliding through long grass near the water hole where plump deer pass. If you notice, the punctuation mark is missing. Only after the third line you have the punctuation mark, which is a full stop. So here when a line runs without a punctuation mark, then that is known as an enjambment. Enjambment means without punctuation. So sliding through long grass, there is no punctuation after that. Near the water hole, no punctuation again. Where plump deer pass, full stop. So the punctuation full stop comes only on the third line. Please note these in your textbook as I tell you. So now next comes the poetic device called imagery. Imagery can be of different types. So here let's focus on the visual imagery. Visual imagery is the imagery that is when a person describes something, an image just pops into your mind. Okay, so here when the poet says in the first stanza, when the poet says stalks in his vivid stripes, even when you read that, you get the image of the tiger in front of your eyes, isn't it? So vivid stripes is the imagery used here. Now next is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds in a particular sentence or a line. Now here if you notice, it is in the last stanza, first two words. He hears. He hears, if you notice, the consonant sound h is used here. Okay, so consonant sound h. He hears. So he hears is the alliteration used in the poem. Please note it. Then comes assonance. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in the same line. Repetition of vowel sound. Alliteration was repetition of consonant sounds and assonance is a repetition of vowel sounds. Now here it is the same stanza, that is the last stanza, the third line, with his brilliant. Here we refer to the sound E, the E sound. The vowel sound E is repeated here, with his brilliant. Okay, so these are the various poetic devices used in the poem. So we have come to an end of the poem. Now please go through the notes that has been sent and answer the questions that is provided into your notebooks. Okay, So thank you, children.